For UFC Fight Night Cerrone versus Till. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Felipe Arantes versus Josh Emmett. To me, both these guys are good strikers. I feel like Emmett's a little bit more of a boxer to Felipe's Muay Thai. I think Josh has a much better wrestling game overall. I think he can hit the takedowns when he needs to score points. Arantes' jiu-jitsu off his back is pretty underrated, but I feel like this fight is going to be a lot like how it was when Felipe fought Andre Fili. Josh Emmett's his teammate, and I think he's going to have a similar game plan. It's going to be a similar fight where it's back and forth, but I think the takedowns are going to edge out every round for Josh Emmett, and I think he's going to win 30-27. Next is Lena Langsberg versus Aspen Ladd. And to me, this is really close. Both these chicks aren't super great overall. I think they're primarily just strikers with a little bit of grappling. I'm going to go with Aspen just because I think she's a little bit better. But like I said, I don't think either of these chicks are that great, so it's kind of a real toss-up. Next is Salim. Oh, I can't say a lot of these guys' last names. Versus Warley Alvarez. And Salim looks like a really good striker, but that's about it. I don't think he's greatly well-rounded. I think Warley, and he's taking this fight on super short notice. I think Warley was supposed to fight Jim Wallhead, but Jim Wallhead pulled out. I don't think this guy is good enough to beat Warley. I think that the short notice is going to hurt him too. I think sooner or later Warley's going to get this fight to the ground. He's going to win by submission. Next is Artem Lobov versus Andre Fili. To me, I don't really understand why this fight isn't on the main card. I understand this card's in Poland and they want to promote some of the Polish fighters on the main card, but this is probably the second best fight on the card overall, in my opinion. I mean, it's two guys that are, right outside of the top 15. I think Artem, showed in his last fight against Cub Swanson. He's a lot better than I think a lot of people get, including me. A lot of people didn't give him a lot of credit, but he went 5 hard rounds with Cub, and he kept his own the whole fight. I mean, even though he only won that first round, I mean, there was never a round where he wasn't at least, putting up a fight against Cub, and Cub's like number 3 in the world. So, I think this fight is really close. I think Andre Fili tends to kind of slow down a little bit. Not necessarily gas, but I feel like he expends a lot of energy early, and his technique isn't as crisp in later rounds as it is in the early rounds. I think Artem, if he can get through that first round, he'll start to pick it up a little bit. And I think this fight's going to be a really close split decision, but I think Artem's going to get the split decision. And this might be fight of the night. Next is Sam Alvey versus Ramazan. I don't know how to say his last name, but Ramazan's a really strong wrestler with submission, but that's about it. I feel like he's been finished before, and I know he's a pretty solid prospect, but I think Sam Alvey, has fought much better wrestlers with the striking game. Like, you look at his last fight against Rashad, and I feel like Sam Alvey's shown that his takedown defense is very, very legit. I feel like we've seen that throughout his UFC career. His biggest weakness is just his activity. He doesn't throw a lot of strikes, and that ends up hurting him in close fights. But I feel like Ramazan's just going to keep trying to take this fight to the ground. Alvey's going to stuff it, and when they're in the clinch, that's when Alvey does kind of throw a lot of strikes, is in clinch fights. So I think that this fight's going to favor Alvey, and I think sooner or later he's going to land that big knockout shot. Probably late first, mid-second. Next is Damian Stikes versus Brian Kelleher. And Brian Kelleher is a really good wrestler with some decent submissions, but he's always had weak submission defense. And to me, Damian Stikes really impressed me in his last fight with his striking. I think he's been working on it a lot. I think that if this fight is striking, Damian Stikes should be able to win a decision. And if this goes to the ground, I think Damian Stikes will catch him in a submission sooner or later. I think his jiu-jitsu is better than Brian Kelleher's submission defense. So I've got Damian Stikes winning this fight by finish, most likely submission in the later rounds. Next is Anthony Hamilton versus Adam. Like I said, a lot of these guys have crazy last Polish names. So it's just Adam versus Anthony Hamilton. Adam looks a lot like Marcel Fortuna, in my opinion. I think he's, primarily a jiu-jitsu guy, but he has big power in his hands. And to me, Anthony Hamilton just said he retired, and I feel like he got knocked out in his last fight. I think he's just taking this fight because the UFC had nobody else to call, and he said sure. I don't think he's in it anymore. Like I said, he got knocked out. I don't even know how he got medically cleared because it feels like that was just a couple weeks ago. And like I said, I feel like he is kind of mentally checked out at this point, and I think that Adam's going to win by knockout in the first round probably. Next is Marcin Held versus Nasrat Yeah, Nasser. Sorry guys, but these guys have really fucking crazy last names. I feel like Marcin Held, has been really unlucky in his UFC career. I feel like his first two fights were both very, very close. You could argue he won both of them, but they were like split decision losses. And then he got caught with a knee in a fight that he was dominating. So he's 0-3, but it's like he was like an inch away from winning all three of those fights. So I'm glad he's getting one more. I think Nasrat is a pretty good striker, but that's about it. I think that Marcin Held's going to get this guy to the ground and just get a submission. I feel like they kind of want him around, and I think they kind of want to start to build him back up, so they're giving him an easy fight, and that's what I think is going to happen. I think Marcin Held's going to get this fight to the ground, and he's going to win by submission, probably in the first round. Next, we got Oscar versus Jonathan Wilson, and Oscar looks like a really good Polish up-and-comer. He's got good striking, good takedown defense, and all that. To me, Jonathan Wilson is, he hasn't looked that great since his UFC debut. I feel like he's lost 2 in a row, and he's a gigantic dude dropping down to middleweight. I don't know how he's going to look with that weight cut. His gas tank didn't look amazing at 205, and he didn't have to cut anywhere near as much weight to make that weight. So I feel like Oscar is going to, just be able to keep a better pace on Jonathan and either get a late third round TKO or he's just going to win a decision. Because like I said, I think both these guys have very similar styles. I think Jonathan Wilson just uses his wrestling more offensively, and Oscar uses it more defensively. But striking-wise, they're probably close, but Oscar throws a little bit more volume. Like I said, I think it's going to be a decision for Oscar. Next, we got Jan Blachowicz versus Devin Clark. And to me, Devin Clark has not looked that impressive. He's basically just the guy who pushes you against the fence and tries to grind out the fight. He got knocked down in his UFC debut and he's won 2 fights in a row, but like I said, neither of those fights are that impressive. He just kind of pushed the guy against the fence and did nothing. I feel like Jan's the better striker overall, and I think he's the better fighter overall. The only thing is his conditioning isn't that great. If I was him, I'd just work a crap load on my conditioning so that way come the third round he can keep a strong pace. But like I said, I think Jan has a huge advantage striking-wise wherever they're at, and I think sooner or later he's going to catch Devin and win by knockout. Next, we got Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Jody. I can't say her last name, but I think Karolina's is 2 strikers, and Karolina's the much better striker. That's all the way you can look at it. Neither of these chicks are great grapplers. I think they're just feeding Karolina a win because, she's lost 2 in a row. And that's just what I think is going to happen. I think Karolina's going to edge out every single round by a little bit and end up winning a 30-27 decision. Finally, we got Donald Cerrone versus Darren Till. And I think that this fight is going to be a really fun fight. I don't understand why Cerrone's fighting anybody outside the top 15 at this point in his career. I know he likes to fight, and it's a main event, so he's going to get paid, but it's like, why don't you just fight anybody in the top 15? I mean, Darren Till's a good fighter, but he's not ranked, so there's, just no real point to this fight, in my opinion. I think Darren Till's striking is really good, and his takedown defense and defensive grappling game is really, really underrated. He's 4-1 in the UFC, I think, and that one isn't a loss, it's a draw. And it was a fight that he was dominating, and then he broke his arm and lost the third round 10-8. So Darren Till is really, really good, but I still think Cerrone's probably a little bit better of a striker. And I think if Cerrone can get this fight to the ground, and I do think it's going to hit the ground sooner or later, he does have a big advantage there. I think that his submission game is much better than Darren Till's defensive grappling. Like I said, Darren Till has great takedown defense, but if this fight hits the ground for any reason, I think Cerrone's going to win by triangle or rear naked choke. And that's what I think is going to happen. I think sooner or later, Cerrone's going to take this fight to the ground when Darren Till's not expecting it. He's going to throw like a weak body kick or something. Cerrone's going to catch it, trip him. And then once he's on top, he's just going to, mount him pretty quick and submit him. So, like I said, I've got Cerrone winning by first or second round submission, probably a rear naked choke. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.